Hi, I'm Steve Whaley with Bluebird, and welcome to a Bird's Eye View podcast. In this episode, we're going to be hitting the easy button on setting up infrastructure for alternative fuel vehicles that operate on propane. Here with me today is Brian Raygor, the National Autogas Business Manager for Ferrellgas. Brian, welcome, and thanks for coming.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Now, being a National Autogas Business Manager, tell me about what that role entails for Ferrellgas.
Being a national company, Ferrellgas, I do oversee most of the Autogas customers, installation, sales across the country.
Now, this term autogas, and we call them propane buses, because we have diesel, we have gasoline, we have propane buses and EV buses. What's the term autogas entail?
Autogas would be any vehicle that's running on propane as a motor fuel.
Okay. Very good, very good. And it's also a worldwide term. We have got about 30 million vehicles running on propane, being that third most popular motor fuel. So you're responsible for all of the Autogas business management for the United States.
Yes.
Terrific. Okay. Now, I know student transportation is your favorite market segment, but is this going on anywhere else?
It is. In other segments, we have people moving is a primary source for autogas in terms of where it's being used. Student transportation is huge, and it's been a great success. But other areas would include, maybe shuttles that are moving people around. Also,
paratransit industry. Okay.
Yep. So anytime they're moving people, a lot of times where they're returning, it's a close route. They're returning to a base. Those are excellent locations and places to be using propane. Other things would be delivery companies. If you've got delivery companies that are delivering any type of product, but always returning more to a centralized home base.
Okay,
those
so
are the things.
This centralized home base is kind of important too. So that's where you come in with your infrastructure to energize this bus. Okay, because that's one of the things that's probably the most daunting for anyone leaving the gasoline or diesel market, where you have gasoline and diesel at every corner. But to get energy in our clean burning alternative fuel vehicles, for EV charging or for propane, you don't see them everywhere. So when you work with fleets, how does this work as far as getting that energy in the buses or the delivery vehicles or paratransit and so forth? How do you make that happen?
Well, I'm going to touch on something you said, though. You don't see the refueling everywhere. It's quite interesting. There's a lot of places that you can get fuel. Now, you may not notice it because you're not looking for it, but once you start to see it and understand it, there are a lot of places that you can go to get fuel, and we've got different tools that you can use to help.
Public places.
Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, so people can get fuel. I mean, you can drive your vehicle across the country and run on autogas the entire way. You might have to do a little bit more work ahead of time just to know where you're going. Just a little bit, but it's not undoable. I've actually done it myself. Driven cross country on propane and was able to refuel the entire way.
I know the Department of Energy has their mobile app.
Yeah.
For EV charging, for CNG, for hydrogen, and
it exists for
propane's
propane
in there
also.
as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do your mapping out and get anywhere you want.
And don't forget to check out the new Bluebird merch store. We've got hats, wearables, even plush buses. You can check it out at the URL here listed.
In a fleet environment where we have a central location for vehicles being housed and stored and taken care of, you set up infrastructure for them right there.
Correct. So that's the most common application that we're seeing, is where people are returning to a base so that they can actually do their own refueling right on their site. So we'll come in, we'll figure out a solution that works for them, that's going to meet the size of their fleet. What are they wanting to do? We'll install the equipment, help them with the training. We will go through all those steps so that they're comfortable and understand what they're what they're doing and how to use the propane equipment.
Okay, so this infrastructure to get fuel, there's I think we talked about 4 different ways of getting fuel in there. You have fuel delivery trucks. You have sometimes temporary. You have kind of a starter kit for doing a few vehicles and scaling it up. Tell me about how the different ways that you can fuel a vehicle.
So we'll start with what we'll call mobile fueling, where we'll fill a vehicle directly from a bobtail.
And a bobtail is
our delivery truck that's going to be bringing the fuel.
okay. The ones that you see going down the road, going in every community in the United States, filling up my grandmother's house, with her propane tank for energy and everything else. So those fuel delivery trucks, you can use those to put them right in the buses.
They are the exact same vehicles that are delivering to all those applications. Will deliver the exact same product to the bus.
Okay.
So we can fill that bus directly. Now, that is more of a time-consuming operation. Usually it takes a little bit more planning to make sure that we can be there and fuel at a specific time. The next would be we have some temporary solutions where we can bring in a mobile fueling trailer where everything is self-contained on a trailer that will be run by a generator. It's going to have a tank, a pump, and
Propane generator.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're talking off the grid.
Absolutely. So I'll use that application a lot of times when we're transitioning. Maybe we've been notified that someone needs fuel, but to get the equipment installed, there may be a little bit of a delay waiting for parts or equipment or permits or different things. So we'll bring in the trailer and we'll have the trailer on site for a temporary application.
Okay.
The next would be the most common installation is going to be permanent equipment, and that can consist of a single pump, a single dispenser, a single tank, but we can expand it as needed depending on the size of the fleet.
Okay, when you say expand it, are you talking about are you changing out the dispenser or the pump, or are you just growing the fuel capacity that's there?
In most applications, we're just adding additional storage.
Okay.
So as a fleet starts to grow with the Autogas, and they've started in this, and they might start small for various reasons, maybe hesitation or
I want to try this out and see how it's going to work.
I'm not going to come in and put in the biggest equipment and the biggest setup that I can. Let's start small and take care of them, and then as they continue to grow their fleet, we will grow their equipment, and we can do that. Typically, we're going to add additional tanks to have more storage on site, but depending on the size of the fleet and how many vehicles they have, we might be able to add a second dispenser or a third or a fourth.
Well, yeah, you don't want a line of vehicles, waiting for these things to get energized, with fuel. Speaking of which, how fast? I mean, everybody knows, when you go to fill up diesel or fill up gasoline, how long that takes. How long does it take to fill up propane? That's a liquid, right?
It is.
Okay.
And the speed is the exact same.
Okay.
So whatever you're normally used to filling gasoline or diesel, you're going to see the same thing when you're filling with propane.
All right. So we start off with a few vehicles. We put say 1,000-gallon tank on a skid that has a dispenser, right there. And then, I like this. I like the fuel cost savings. I like the quietness. I like the range that I get. I'm going to do some more. What's the next thing? You talked about putting multiple tanks in?
Yeah. So we can put in any combination that is needed or we have the space for. So we do have requirements. Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about these requirements.
Sure.
When you're working with someone who's just kind of investigating, hey, I'm thinking about going to propane, but how would that look at my particular site? How much do you charge to do a site visit to see where they could put it and how much and how it would all work?
There's no charge for that.
Okay.
So that's part of helping them understand how this is going to work. We want them to be comfortable with it. In most applications, this is something new. So there's hesitation. Yeah. There's, they're not understanding it. So we're going to come out. They might have an idea of where they think equipment might be best. But we're going to look at it, and we're going to take into consideration some other things. We do have requirements for where propane tanks can go, and those are national standards. So we've got to be away from buildings to certain
Setback from the
distances,
building,
property
not
lines.
underneath a power line.
Exactly.
Things just that make sense.
So they might look at it and say, hey, it'd be great to have it here, but we're going to look at it and we're going to say, yeah, it's a great spot, but because of these issues, we might have to move it a little bit. So
Sure.
we want to be part of that process. We want to help them with that. So we're not going to charge anything to come out and help do that.
Okay. All right. So speaking of not charging them, infrastructure, we're talking about compressed natural gas or liquefied natural gas or electric charging stations. What kind of costs are involved with the infrastructure needed for, dispensing propane into buses and vehicles?
Here comes your easy button.
Push it
Push the
for me.
easy button. Most applications, we're not going to charge for the use of the equipment.
Okay.
We're going to provide the equipment for them.
Okay. So where's the catch, Brian?
The catch is we want to deliver the fuel. So we'll provide you the equipment, but we're also going to deliver the fuel for you.
Okay. So there's an exchange.
Yes.
Okay. If a district enters into a fuel agreement with you to buy fuel at such and such a price, you're going to provide them the equipment to dispense that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, that's all the equipment necessary to do it. But there's usually some site preparation that needs to happen. How much electricity do you need to run that pump for dispensing fuel?
Not very much. Depending on the application, we can actually use single-phase electricity.
Okay.
So we don't require
volts and amps.
a lot.
Volts and amps. So we're talking like a 220, 40 amp, 30 amp circuit. Yeah. Kind of like a clothes dryer at your house.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
there's not a lot to run it.
Okay. All right. So, if a site, provides that kind of electricity, you can set up everything else to make it good. Okay. So how long of a fuel agreement does someone need to enter into to get that kind of infrastructure set up?
Well, we're going to typically ask that they help with some of this by getting the electricity to the site and helping with the site prep. And that site prep, might be having the level ground, put in a concrete pad, providing crash protection. So we will ask for some assistance on that. But then when it comes to a contract to provide the equipment, typically, we're going to look for a 3 to 5 year agreement for the fuel.
Okay. All right. So the 3 to 5 year agreement on the fuel, how much is this more than gasoline or diesel? And I'm kind of teasing a little bit. We all know it's a little bit less, but how much less than gasoline and diesel are we talking about?
I'm going to go with a national number again because I'm covering the entire
national.
I'm covering the entire U.S. Typically, you're going to see about $1.50 savings or more.
Okay.
Between gas and diesel to propane.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So, this is one of those ways of being, environmentally sustainable because it's financially sustainable. We're actually doing cost per mile that are much less than diesel and less than gasoline as well. All right. So if someone wants to venture out and make this happen, they talk with their Bluebird dealer about speccing out propane buses, and they put in an order. When do they start talking to you about getting this infrastructure? How long does this take?
My recommendation is when they place their order for their buses, they should also be looking at finding a propane supplier to start doing that.
Okay.
Typically, it's going to take a few months to get the equipment, source the equipment, to get the site ready, deal with any permits that might be out there. So,
And you deal with the permitting
we
as
do.
well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll take care of all of the permitting for the propane.
Okay.
But I say if you start with getting your propane supplier, getting them ready at the same time that you're ordering your buses, most of the time you're going to have your propane installation done as your buses are arriving.
Okay.
So then there's
A
no
little before, actually.
Yeah.
I've seen your work.
Yeah, I try to get it in there before the vehicles arrive because then we can avoid having to do the mobile fueling or the trailer, but being prepared, having everything ready.
Yeah, plan B, you got plan C. Yeah.
When those buses arrive, we want them on the road right away.
Sure.
So we want to get that equipment in there.
All right. So how is the actual fueling? Because a lot of times we have, our drivers are actually fueling and making this happen. What do they need to know about dispensing propane? How's it different from gasoline or diesel from their perspective and making it work?
It's very similar, but it's also different.
Okay.
So we do have a different nozzle that is different than gasoline or diesel. It works the same way, except it is like a quick disconnect where you will push the nozzle onto a fitting on the vehicle,
Okay.
squeeze the trigger, and then that will allow the flow of product. Where it's different than gasoline or diesel, when you turn the pump on for a gas pump, you can pull the trigger and you can
Fill it anywhere you want.
You can shoot it anywhere you want. You can't do that with the propane. It actually has to be connected to the vehicle before the propane will flow.
And it's more like a air compression hose type of connection.
Yeah.
So the air doesn't come out or the fuel doesn't come out unless it has a proper connection to make it happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when we've got the equipment on site and they're getting ready to do the fueling, we're going to go through training with them. We have classroom training that we go through, and then we're going to do hands-on training. We want them to be comfortable.
Sure.
Again, because it may be new. There's always some questions and stuff like that, but we want to show them the easy button, on how fueling of the vehicles work. It's also different when we compare it to gas and diesel. When you're fueling a vehicle and you're trying to top it off a little bit more. Maybe I'm at $19.99. I want to get to $20. You can play with the nozzle and try to get to that point. You can't do that with the propane.
Okay.
So once a tank is full, it's full. You can't put any more into it.
Okay, great. Speaking of which, how does like a transportation director or someone in the financial side manage how much fuel is going into each bus and tracking that? Do you provide anything on fuel management?
Yeah, that's another thing that we can do with our equipment. We're able to provide fuel management.
Okay.
So sometimes we'll see that maybe they already have fuel management. They might have one company or another that's using that they're using for tracking their gas and diesel. And in most applications, they can use that exact same equipment to track the propane.
Okay, so it'll integrate in there, so
Yep.
they don't have to go out and start looking at the gauge on the propane tank to find out where they're at, because you have ways of monitoring that.
Yep. So we can track the fuel in the tank also.
Okay.
So as they're using fuel, we'll see it and we'll send out another delivery. So we can really take care of all of it for them. They don't have to worry about reordering. We can help them with the tracking of their fuel per vehicle. We'll do the training. We'll do the maintenance. We'll work on all of those different things for
This
them.
easy button's getting bigger all the time. Nice and easy to hit.
That's the way we want it to be.
All right. So what else have I missed that you want to tell folks who are thinking about doing this that might make it easy for them to do this exploration and get on the bus?
The idea of propane, I think, gives people a little hesitation. But if they start talking to other people, they'll find out that it's really not as bad as they might think.
Other people, I mean, even just in student transportation, we have 1,100 school districts that have already set up this infrastructure and are dispensing propane into their buses and getting all the environmental benefits and the savings. So we can,
School districts talk, and that's what I recommend. I mean, reach out to the other districts that are using it. See what they have to say, because they're having great success with it. So those are the people that are talking about it, and they're finding that success. So,
well, I appreciate you being here, Brian, and making it a very nice, big, easy button. And that's a bird's eye view of the infrastructure for propane and how easy it is to get started.